Hi, welcome to the fourth part of the course Developing Modern Web Platforms using HTML, CSS, JavaScript. This is the fourth part of the course, which is JavaScript part. My name is Farhad Eftekari and I'm the teacher of this course. Here are some course links where you can find the material of the course. And here are also some typographical conventions. It's better to get to know them because you're gonna meet them on the bottom of each slide time to time and make sure to understand them and use them. So the material of the course has been divided into three different levels: easy, moderate, and hard. And it's up to the students how deep they want to gain knowledge in this course. Some people would like to just get familiar with the basic concepts, and some would like to get more information about much more complex and different kind of materials. You're going to see them on top of each slides. And here are also some slides framework. It's nice to get to know them because each part of the slides has some sort of a definition. We're going to meet titles of each slides here. Difficulty level indicator, as you got familiar with in the last previous slide, going to be on top of the slides. We have the slides number and we have tutorial video code, where if you enter instead of this code, then you're going to get redirected to the exact part of the tutorial videos. The content going to be in the center. We have the course name, section name, and those typographical conventions and icons. And here are the content of this part of the course. So first, we're going to understand, is JavaScript same as Java? We're going to understand JavaScript benefits. We're going to say hi to the scripts, and then understanding flowcharts for programming. Then we're going to get familiar with the concept of objects and properties, and objects and events, and then objects and methods. Then we're going to understand document object, and when browser meets a web page, what are the different kind of steps that a browser needs to go through in order to show you a web page, and then how HTML, CSS, JavaScript coexist. Then you're going to write your very first JavaScript code, and then you're going to get familiar with what are the ways to store JavaScript file, different concepts of internal and external. Then we're going to display data in JavaScript, and then we're going to use objects and methods. Then we're going to get familiar with variables and data types, and then operators, functions, this, and then we're going to use document object model, or DOM, and then also we're going to use browser object model. And then I'm going to work with global objects. Then we're going to get familiar with comparison operators, and then logical operators, decisions, loops. We're also going to get familiar with, and then we're going to get understand how we can get access to the elements in DOM, document object model, and then we're going to see how we can remove elements from the DOM, and how we can access elements attributes. Then we're going to work with events, validations, error handling, debugging, what is the concept of a strict mode in JavaScript, JSON, and then in the last parts, as the extra part, we're going to get familiar with JavaScript libraries and frameworks. Then we're going to get introduced to jQuery, AngularJS, and React.js. Many topics, but very beneficial in order to get have a very nice understanding over JavaScript to begin with. So by definition, JavaScript stands for JS stands for JavaScript, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, OOP, which stands for Object Oriented Programming, BOM, which is Browser Object Model, DOM, Document Object Model, JSON, which is JavaScript Object Notation. You're going to see them a lot during the course, so make sure to understand these definitions. There is a very long history that's how JavaScript has been created. Here's a very short and brief history from the source of W3 schools, which you can read and just get familiar with a brief history. But there are many online material where you can also search on YouTube and Google and anywhere to understand how JavaScript has been created and what was the purpose of creating such thing. We're not gonna go through that because it's not really beneficial for you to understand like how you can use JavaScript for your projects and for your websites, but it's a nice maybe extra information if you want to on your own. Just go and read about it. As a file name extensions for JavaScript, you can easily understand JS files which have the extensions of JS, so they're really easy to point out if you have some sort of a project folder or zip file or anything. By this extension you may know that these files are JavaScript files. And as an internet media type, JavaScript files are application JavaScript and text JavaScript media types. So now the question is JavaScript same as Java? Because the name sounds really similar. So if you have a pair, you can discuss it with your pair that if they are the same. I'm not gonna pause. I'm not gonna be quiet during this discussion, so you can pause the tutorial videos whenever you wanted to discuss or search something. So just to save some time, I'm gonna go directly continue with the material. So it's up to you to pause and think or search or whatever you like to do. So to compare with, first of all, JavaScript is an OOP or object-oriented programming scripting language, and Java is an also OOP programming language. JavaScript code is run on a browser only, but Java creates applications that run in a virtual machine or browsers. JavaScript code are all in text, and Java code needs to be compiled. So there's no compile needed for JavaScript codes. But when you are writing some Java applications or Java programs, after you write them and have them as some sort of a project, you need to compile them, and then after those applications being compiled, then you can upload them or run them in virtual machines or browsers or whatever to work with. And they of course require different kind of plugins in order to run. And let's see now what are the JavaScript benefits. First of all, JavaScript allows for fast creation of web page events, so they are really practical and handy. And then many JavaScript commands are what are known as events handlers. They can be embedded right into existing HTML comments, which also makes the whole purpose of using JavaScript tangible and very practical to use. So is JavaScript incomplete? Well, if you are old user of internet, if you recall 10 years ago what were the usage of JavaScript throughout the web pages, now you may see and understand they come a very long way during this period of time. Back then it was very simple and it was very stiff to use JavaScript code in the web pages. They weren't really practical as they are right now. But now it's the whole universe of features and abilities that using a JavaScript can add these kind of values to your web pages. And you may search online, you may find different kind of usages of JavaScript during the old times, 10 years ago, 15 years ago maybe. But now it's totally different. And all you see, these fancy applications that you see in Facebook, Gmail, wherever, they definitely use some sort of a JavaScript languages or frameworks in order to create such fancy and great looking applications for the users to use. So JavaScript, by using that, then you make sure you are having more interactive pages. First of all, you need to access elements, you need to modify them, program, and then they will react. So this is a whole very brief steps of applying JavaScript in your web pages. Alright, so let's see what are the simple capabilities of JavaScript. First of all, JavaScript can change HTML content. JavaScript can change HTML attributes, as you got familiar in the HTML part of the course. And JavaScript can change HTML styles as well, like CSS styles that you're using and got familiar in the previous part, the CSS part of the course. JavaScript can hide HTML elements, which is also very handy. And JavaScript can show HTML elements as well. and then much more that you can get benefit from by using JavaScript. So as we discussed previously, first you need to access the content, then you need to modify them, and then have add some programming functionality, and finally they will react to the events that you defined in your programming functionalities. And as a reminder, here is also an HTML tag where you can find how to open and close HTML tag, how to have access to the attributes of the HTMLs. Here is the opening tag, if you recall, of course you recall, and here is also the closing tag of HTML element or tag. And then we have attribute name and attribute value. And also, if you remind CSS part, here also the selector of the CSS, where you can have access to all the H1 elements and tags on the web page, and then also the declaration of CSS as a property name here, and then you have property value as well. Now let's discuss what's the difference between humans and computers when you want them to do some tasks. So we have humans and we have computer. Humans do not need a specific instructions, but on the other hand, computers need a specific instructions. You cannot tell a computer to say, well, go and I don't know, make this website beautiful, or change this color of some text, or text box, or whatever, however you feel like, or make it like a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller. So it needs to be very specific. It needs to be really well planned, all the tasks that you expect a computer in order to do. That's the whole difference between humans and computers. So you need to understand this concept, and whenever you are programming some function or application or project, then come up with the exact step-by-step and a specific instruction in order to do those tasks, and expect the computer to do that for you. Now let's say hi to the script. So that's a very interesting part of the course. If you haven't ever wrote any JavaScript code, then this is going to be your very first moment that you're gonna write and create some JavaScript application or program or web page or whatever. So first you need to define, and then you need to design, and then you need to code step by step, as in the previous slide we discussed what's the reason. So when you want to write a script, you need to define the steps. For instance, you need to tell a human, for instance, to drive. Well, you need to first, as a step one, open the car driver door, sit in driver's seat, close the door, turn on the engine, set the gear to drive, and push the gas pedal as a sixth step. But if it's a human, then you usually go and do your thing, and you just need to tell, well, go and drive. But if you want to tell that to a robot or program or computer application, it's a simplified example, but you need to come up with the specific steps in order to make that task done. Alright, now let's define a goal and write some scripts. So when the button is clicked, the script is triggered. It reads the value name entered into the name from field. It checks if the value is null or not. If the user has not entered anything, a message will appear telling him or her to enter a name. If a name has been entered, show the welcome message including the entered name. So unlike the previous example, which wasn't really web developing example, but this one is. So the whole point is we have a text box and we want to show some kind of a welcome message to the user. So that's a specific step-by-step steps in order to create this script. So first there was a button, and when they clicked the button, the scripts will trigger. So there is a text box there, so it reads some kind of a value from that text box as a name value, and then the program will check if the value is null or not. So it means that if the user entered some value inside of that text box or not, and if it's a null, it means no information has been provided for that text box. And if the user has not entered anything, then a message will appear to tell, well, you haven't entered anything. And if it was entered, then we're going to show the welcome message and the task will be done. Now let's understand flowcharts for programming. A flowchart is a type of diagram that represents an algorithm, workflow, or process, showing the steps as boxes of various kinds and their order by connecting them with arrows. This diagrammatic representation illustrates a solution model to a given problem. Flowcharts are used in analyzing, designing, documenting, or managing a process or a program in various fields. So here you can find different symbols, their names, and the functionality of them. It would be really nice at this stage, if you're also new to programming, get familiar with them. There are tons of online resources in order to get familiar and learn flowcharts. I totally recommend you to do that because it gives you some sort of a very deep and practical knowledge. Before creating an application, you can use flowcharts and get the best out of these benefits that it gives you before even writing a single line of the code. And then after creating your flowcharts, then you will be able to much more easily create your programs by using these flowcharts. Now let's get familiar with objects. Objects are key to understanding object-oriented technology. Look around right now and you'll find many examples of real-world objects. Your dog, your desk, your television set, your bicycle. Real-world objects share two characteristics. They all have a state and behavior. Dogs have a state like name, color, breed, are they hungry or not, and behavior like barking, fetching, wagging tail. Bicycles also have a state like what's the current gear of a bicycle if it has some sort of a gears, current pedal cadence, current speed, and behavior such as changing gear, changing pedal cadence, applying brakes. Identifying the state and behavior for real-world object is a great way to begin thinking in terms of object-oriented programming. So the understanding of objects is really important, especially and solely in programming languages that are object-oriented. It's a very important concept. Make sure to find more about this concept online. This is not the really target of this course. It's a much more deeper programming knowledge. But since JavaScript is also an OOP or object-oriented programming language, knowing this object-oriented programming knowledge is also could be very beneficial and important when you're writing your code. So here, to understand a bit better about objects, objects may have properties, events, and methods. We're gonna get familiar with them later and to see what are the difference, what are the definitions of them, and then you want to create some sort of an object, then what is the property, what is event, and what is the method. So to begin with, let's discuss the properties of object. Each object type share common characteristics. We all such characteristics, properties, and we can assign values to those properties. For instance, imagine we want to create an object named car. So the car name is a property of a car. Imagine it's a BMW car. A car model, 5 series, and car color, which is black, and car weight. So every single car have these 4 different properties. So if you want to create another object, which is a car, then you can also assign these properties values to that car as well. Now let's get familiar with events. When a specific event happens, that event can be used to trigger a specific section of your code. Imagine you have the car, so the car can start, the car can drive, the car can apply brakes, and the car can stop. So they are the events of that car. Now let's get familiar with the methods in this car example object. Methods are the represents of the things people need to do with objects. They can retrieve or update the values of an object's properties. So imagine you have that car, so you can change the speed of the car by applying the change the speed method. You can set color of the car. So imagine you created the object, name it car, and there is an object in the website. So you can apply this set color and change the color of the car in that web page as well. Set the color to black, red, blue, or whatever value that you want to assign to that. Now let's understand what will happen when a browser meets a web page, and what are the steps that the browser needs to go through in order to show you a web page. First of all, a browser receives a page as HTML code. And then the browser can create a model of the page and store it in a memory according to that elements of the HTML and attributes and all of these different characteristics of the elements of the HTML. And then it uses a rendering engine to show the page on the screen. So that's how it's a bit different in different browsers when you browse and view a web page. So the rendering engine is a bit different, and then that's the reason of some kind of a small difference between pages when they are like being browsed in different kind of browsers. And now let's see how HTML, CSS, and JavaScript coexist together. So we have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. HTML, as you got to understand in the HTML part of the course, is the content layer of the page. And extensions are also HTML or HTM. CSS is the presentation layer of the pages, as you got also familiar in CSS part. And the extension could be CSS files for external CSS files. And JavaScript is the behavior layer, which you're gonna understand in this part of the course. And the extension of the files is also JS. And now let's get familiar that how we can store JavaScript code in our web pages and web applications. So there's a concept of internal and external, as you got also familiar in CSS part of the course. So we have external, inline, and internal. Also very similar to CSS part that we were like wanted to store CSS files. And now this is exactly how you can store JS or JavaScript files. So as a method one, here you can see how we are storing JavaScript file as an inline method. So it's inside of HTML file where you can find and see these HTML elements and tags in this example. And here you can see we have a button, and then we have onClick event. And now we are writing some JavaScript code here. So whenever a user click that button, hello JavaScript will be shown to the user. So I want you to copy paste or write this piece of code and then save it as HTML page and also see this example by yourself, that how it works. Usually you need to take care of this, changing these quotations into quotations, double quotations into the ones, because when you are like writing in a Microsoft Office, sometimes they are showing some different type of quotations, and then you need to change them to the regular ones if you want to save your page in order that page to work, because that's not a quotation. This is the quotation, but this is not the quotation. So you may cause error if you don't change it, and then the web page will not work according to your expectations. So let's, as I told you, copy paste or write this piece of code, and then it's going to be your very first JavaScript code. So it was the inline method, and then JavaScript was written inside of this kind of attributes as a value here. So then when the browser is rendering a page, it can also easily show the page according to your plan that you are creating the page. And now the method 2 would be having it as some sort of inside of the HTML file. So you place a script parts here, and then you write your JavaScript code inside of that script part. And then here you can see now for onClick attribute, here the value is my function. So the browser automatically, when it encounters this part, it will run this function and it will somehow apply this part of the code, and then this part of the code, as you can recall to the previous part, is exactly the same. So now we are storing JavaScript code according to this method, and now you can see also when you're like browsing some pages and viewing some source code, then you can see also this example as being used a lot. Make sure to also copy paste and use this code, write it and just test it and then see how it works. And the final method will be external files. As a JavaScript file, you can easily have it here, a script, and the source is the name of the JavaScript file. It needs to be the same directory as this page because of this linking part here. And then here you also have that main function, but then the browser can find this main function piece of code inside of this demo3.js because you already linked that file. And it's like you include this part of the code here. This is exactly the same that you are injecting this part of the code at this part of your HTML code. But now you can see it's much more organized and easier to read, easier to add more piece of codes there. So this is also the method tree, which was external way of storing JavaScript code. Also try this code, copy paste it and also save it, this part of the code as your demo3.html file, and then here demo3.js file. Now let's see what are the advantages of using external JavaScript files when you want to include our JavaScript code inside of our web pages. First of all, it separates HTML and the code of JavaScript. So your HTML code is separated from your JavaScript code. It makes it much easier for you to later on modify your code, or if you're working in a group of people, then also it's going to be much easier to work in a team as well, because then everybody can participate on different kind of files. Definitely it's going to increase some kind of advantage for this purpose. And then it makes HTML and JavaScript easier to read and maintain. Well, of course it's true, because then they are not really including and mixing with each other, so that makes it much easier to read your code as well. And then cached JavaScript files can speed up page loads. So the browser, when they want to actually show and access some pages, first they check if any modified or updated edition of that file is available on the server or not. And then if it's the same file, they're going to show the exact file that they already like visited before and they downloaded in your computer. So that's also increase your pages speed, because you may modify your web page in your HTML code, but your JavaScript code is still the same. So in that way, it depends on your project, of course, but even some bytes or kilobytes gonna be saved, and then the speed of accessing your page will be increased if you use this method. Now let's discuss how we can display data in JavaScript. We can use windows.alert, which show and write into an alert box, or document.write, writing into HTML output, inner HTML, which writes into an HTML element, and console.log, which also writes into the browser console. We're going to use them in a practical way one by one, because it's a very important topic, and usually we are working with displaying data or inserting some data or text inside of HTML elements, or the other purposes around by using windows.alert or console.log for testing and these kind of purposes. Let's try and then let's see one by one how they work. Alright, now let's try displaying data in JavaScript using windows.alert. I wrote this piece of code, copy pasted here in Atom for you, and I saved it as a one.html file. So basically we have HTML elements here, And this part is our JavaScript part. I'm using windows.alert and then whatever message I would like to include in this alert box now. All right, now here you can see when I open this file, alert box comes and say hi, exactly the message that I wrote here in this part of the code. So you can test your variables, you can test your values, whatever you would like to show, or some sort of a welcome message to user, or whenever some error occurs, you can just show it to the user using windows.alert. So this is one of the ways. And after user press OK, then the other part of the code, the other part of the page is being shown to the user as well. You can also try it by yourself. Let's make sure that you fully be able to use this Windows.alert in order to show some message to the user, or sometimes for testing purposes. The other one is Windows.write. Let's see how it works. So your assumption would be that there's not going to be any alert box or something, so it's just going to be some part of the code, this text being written, but let's see where. Here you can see that after the text, my paragraph, you can see hi exactly the way that we included here in this part of the code. If you also go to view page source, you can see exactly this part of the code. So it's not somehow like it's being transferred into hi, just like this message. The browser itself understands that now it has to show this hi part here after my paragraph. Let's make sure that you can also try it for yourself. And let's use now document that get element by ID and then test and then inner HTML. So here, if you look at this part of the code, you can see we already have an element, HTML element, and we named it test. So this part of the code is getting some access to this element, and then the value of the attribute, whatever it is, inner HTML, is being changed to hi. So by default, you can see there's no message or there's no content for this paragraph HTML element. But when you actually open this code, okay, it's not here. Let's see. There must be a reason. Okay, the reason is this part of the code. I told you a couple of times already before that when you copy pasting my code, sometimes because in Microsoft Office, some of the characters are quite different with this single quotation, quotations and whatever, then your code may not work. So now if I change it to double quotation and save the file again, and then I'm gonna refresh the page. All right, let's see, now what? Okay, we have our test here. Okay, something happened here. So when I saved it, some weird character has been added here. Let me also take a look. We cannot see it here, but let me save it like this now. Okay, now probably it got fixed. So when I refresh it, not again. Let's see why. Actually, it's a very nice thing that now we are investigating with each other to find out what's happening. Here you can see now in this P element, there's also that weird character. Like I said, for some reasons when we are copy pasting from Office software like PowerPoint, Word, or this kind of software in Office, this kind of stuff happens. Now it's normal. I'm kind of sure this time it's gonna work. Let's see. Let's see. All right, now you can see here hi, but this part of JavaScript code is somehow injecting this content as inner HTML inside of this test element here. So this is the way that you can insert some kind of a values, variables, or some content inside of a HTML tag. All right. Very good examples. Make sure to try it by yourself. And now we have console.log. That usually developers are using console.log to see in the code and in the browsers to see, especially for testing, for checking the variables are functioning or assigning some certain variables values to make sure the whole functionality of the code is like working as they expect. And they are like showing some sort of a predefined messages inside of console.log. So here you can see I copy paste that part of the code, and now when I look at it, all right, now let's see what's the problem. Right, okay, well there's no problem actually. It's not going to be shown here. So when I press F12, let me make it a bit smaller for you. Here in console, you see that hi is being visible here. That's the whole thing. So now let me change it to something else in the code. So like I said, imagine you have different kind of variables and you're assigning values to them, and you want to check that in every step what are the values of those variables. So you can pass them to console.log, and then here you can see if they have changed or not. Actually, this part was really important. Later on, you're going to use it very much if you want to dig deeper in JavaScript. So whether you are like using some variables values to check by yourself for testing reasons, or actually to show to user, or to inject some content inside of HTML element, you're going to use these methods a lot. All right, now you can see semicolons in JavaScript are very, very important, just like many other languages, programming languages such as C#, Java. So semicolons separate JavaScript statements and lines. So whenever you're writing one line of JavaScript, if you go to the next line, it's like you're continuing the other line as it is. But when you're placing semicolons, it's like you're now in the other line, and it's like another statement of JavaScript. So make sure to understand them and know how to use them if you haven't ever done that before in any other programming languages. So basically here you can see A is equal to 1, B is equal to 2, and C is equal to 1 plus 2. You can change, for instance, you can move this part of the code plus 2 to the other line, and it's going to work the same because this statement is not closed. But when you add semicolon, the statement is closed. So you can also replace these 3 lines into 1 line of code. Although the readability is gonna decrease, but that's the way you can do it. It's nice to know. And for adding comments, you can also use these special characters. If you want to add some comments which are more than 1 line, you can use these characters. And then if you want to just add single line, you can use this character. Of course, you can also use these ones for adding one single line. And commenting is also very important in order to explain some part of the code later on for yourself, or if you're working in a team, then definitely adding brief and get to the point comments will increase readability of your code, and then the others can more easily understand what's happening in the logic of your code. And this is also an example of using objects and methods in JavaScript. For instance, we have this document object, and then we have write and this parameter as a method here. So this is the way that we are calling objects and their method. Before we discuss what are the objects and methods and this kind of stuff. Right, now let's have some kind of understanding over variables and data types. So in JavaScript, we have different type of data types. We have number data types, a string, boolean, null, and undefined. Let's get familiar with them one by one and make sure to understand them properly, because it's really essential for you to use the proper data type while you're working and where you're like writing some programming code and then defining variables, and you have to assign proper data types for them. Now in this example, you can see we have different type of variables. We have 3 variables. The first one is, we name it name of the variable, and then I assign a value of Alex to name variable. And here I declare variable money. Right now it doesn't have any values, but then in the other line I'm assigning this value 2000.50 as a value of money value, and then here you can see for open I assign the value true. So this one is being considered as a string variable, this one is number, and then the other one is a boolean variable. So JavaScript itself can somehow understand the type of a variable and then assign some values to the variable. Alright, here are some notes that you can consider also when it comes to assigning values to the variables. First of all, JavaScript does not make a distinction between integer values and floating point values. All numbers in JavaScript are represented as floating point values. And then storing a value in a variable is called variable initialization. You can do variable initialization at the time of variable creation or at a later point in time when you need that variable. And then JavaScript is an untyped language. This means that a JavaScript variable can hold a value of any data type. Unlike many other languages, you don't have to tell JavaScript during variable declaration what type of value the variable will hold. The value type of a variable can change during the execution of a program, and JavaScript takes care of it automatically. It makes it a bit flexible for a developer to work with variables. Of course, for validation, it comes a little bit tough, and then the developer itself needs to take care of that part. Maybe later on we discuss that a little bit. So here you can see the keywords we are using. So we have variable name, and then assignment operator, and then the value of the variable, and then this var name, this variable keyword we have to use whenever we want to declare or define some variables, and then we have to name it right after var keyword and then assign the value to it. We can directly use in this line var name equal to the name of the value of the variable. We don't need to put it in different lines. I just wanted to point out these different parts of the keywords actually. And here are also some naming rules, which is very beneficial for you to understand and get familiar with when it comes to assigning some names to variables in JavaScript. First of all, a variable cannot start with letter, underscore, or $sign or a number, and you cannot use dash and dot. No reserved words or JavaScript words, keywords you can use for assigning a variable name. And our variables are case sensitive, so name is not equal to the N capital and name. Make sure that you're using related and proper names for your variables. Later on in your programming and your code, it's going to be much easier to read. And camel case is more than one word. If more than one word your variable is. For instance, if you want to assign one variable name first name, F could be lowercase and then N could be uppercase, just to make it a bit easier to read. And then let's see what is undefined type. A variable that has been declared but no value has been assigned to it yet is an undefined variable type. And null, also a variable with no value. It may have had one of at same point but no longer has a value. That could also be counted as a null value. So this is these two other variable types that we mentioned earlier but we never discussed. In JavaScript, we also have date object that when you want to work with values that contains date or time, you can easily work with the date object and assign some specific values to a variable and also work with your date in order to show to the user, compare some dates together, and many other purposes that it makes it much easier for the developer to work with the date values. Here also the methods of that date object that got introduced in the previous slide and description of them. You can specifically use these methods in many different situations. And if you use this code, you can also see that how you can include a date in your web page and websites. But you have to notice that the date is coming from the browser, which is installed in the computer of the user that is browsing your website. So it's not some values of your server date. It's the value from your visitor's computer. So you have to really notice that, and also in many situations when you want to compare some dates, it's really essential and important. For instance, imagine the date of the computer of the user is not valid. So you cannot really rely on that in order to pass it to the server, store it in some database, and later on use it. So you have to notice this issue and then in many situations come up with proper solution for that. Then we have arrays. Arrays doesn't just store one value, it can store a list of values. For instance, you can store as many strings as values to an array, and then by using indexes you can have access to the value of those arrays. We can now try using arrays to see how it works in like real life situations. Alright, I wrote this piece of code for this example. As you can see, it's a simple HTML file. The HTML tag, head tag, and then the body, and then here I copy pasted that part of the code here in this script part. So you can see we have an array defined and then assigned the name cities, and now we are passing three values as a string to this array: Helsinki, Espoo, and Vantaa. But then here we are passing to the console the first value of this array, and it starts with 0. So the first value that we defined in the array, the index is 0, the second one is 1, and then the third one would be 2. This is how it works. It starts from 0. And if we run this, if we open this page in the browser, here you can see it's working exactly as we are expecting. So we want to show the first index of this array, which is Helsinki, send it to console, and here you can see in the console it's being shown. So you can see here the index 0 is Helsinki, index 1 is Espoo, index 2 is Vantaa. So let's try. Let's see if we change it cities and then set pass the index 1 to the console log for cities array. Let's see how. Let's see what we can see. Probably or definitely it's going to be Espoo, but let's test it. Now I'm going to refresh the page, and now it's Espoo, as we expected before. You can also try it by yourself, play a little bit by it, make sure to understand it, especially this index part. And now you can see also you can assign values to that certain index after defining your index. Let's also try that. For instance, now we want to show index number 1, But before that, what I'm gonna write is cities, and then pass the first index equal to, let's come up with a value. Let's put it Tampere. I'm gonna save it. So let's see what happens. Okay, so what happened was, first initially we assigned these values to the array Helsinki, Espoo and Vantaa, index 0, index 1, index 2, but here I also changed the value of index 1 to Tampere. So when I here pass cities index 1 to console.log, it's supposed to show me the value of Tampere, as you saw also here in this example. So now you can also update the value of the indexes by value of the arrays by using indexes. Definitely make sure to try by yourself, because arrays are very beneficial and they use quite a lot in JavaScript, and you need to be master about them and exactly know what you're doing with them. And also in different kind of programming languages, they are very helpful. By using your arrays name.length, then it's a method that you can use in order to get the length of your arrays. It could be really beneficial in some situations to exactly know how many items you have inside of your array, and then later on you can use it. So try your best to also use this. Let's see if you can show it in console.log. There are also examples online. Now we're going to talk about operators a little bit. They are very beneficial topic, and you almost use them in any type of like applications that you're developing, of course. First, we have assignment operators. You assign some values to a variable. For instance, now you have a variable named city, and then you assign a string Helsinki to as a value to this variable. And then you have arithmetic operators. As you can see here in this example, we have the variable name area, and then we have multiplying 5 to 4 by using arithmetic operators. Then we have string operators. We have the variable here in this example message, and now we are adding the name variable, whatever it is, to welcome. So for instance, we are like, if the person name was Alex, then we are showing welcome Alex, and then setting it to message variable as a value of that. And then we have comparison operators. For instance, you are comparing this 3 is bigger than 5, and then if it was true, open variable, the value will be set to true, and then if it's false, it will be false. Then we have logical operators. We're going to use them in like many statements such as if, and then here you can see we are somehow analyzing this part if it's true, and then this part if it's true, and then by using and we are like checking if both of them are true, and if they both were true, then open will be true. Here you can see examples of arithmetic operators. We have addition, subtraction, division, multiplication, increment, decrement, and modulus. They are really beneficial and very, very important that you have to use. Probably if you have like already experience in programming languages, you know them. But the thing that I like to maybe add to this, they're like very obvious, but this one, for instance, we have the variable name I, we assign the value 5, and then by I++, we are changing the value to 6. We are adding 1 to the previous value of I variable here. And here also this example, we are actually reducing 1 from the previous value of that variable. And here we can see like how many will be left if we divide it by 3. So the value will be 2. There are tons of examples. Make sure to search for them, use them, see if you can assign some values to one variable, and then somehow follow these examples to see if you're able to work with them. Alright, now let's get to know more about functions. It's a very beneficial topic in JavaScript. Without functions, almost writing JavaScript codes are like useless. You're gonna use that a lot in your applications and websites and projects. Make sure to understand them. If you previously worked with any programming languages, you definitely know almost enough about functions. But if not, don't worry. It's a very easy to use concept if you get to know about the important issues that we're going to use, like while we are using functions, and the needs that for us is essential that we come to a conclusion to use functions in our applications. So if you want to get to know more about functions, a function is a subprogram that can be called by code external or internal in the case of recursion to the function. Like the program itself, a function is composed of a subsequence of statements called a function body. Values can be passed to a function, and the function will return a value if we determine that it's going to return a value. Sometimes functions does not return a value and just does something. So the point is, we have a function as a system here, like that may have some input, may have some output. So it's just like a mathematical function. You may enter some variables, values inside of it as a different sort of inputs, like an integer, a string, multiple values, and then the function it will does its job here with the values or with some application related stuff, and then as an output return some values as an integer, a string again, just like input, or series of values, variables, and then that's it. That's the whole thing about the functions. This is a syntax in JavaScript while we are like defining a function we may use. So we have function. This is a keyword to declare a function, and then we have to declare a function name. Later on, while we declare our function, we can use the function based on the function name and the same parameter that we're gonna define here. So we can also define parameters as an input of the function, and then we have some statements here, and then we can have some return. We can have a return keyword here, and then return some sort of values and variables here as well. So pretty simple, pretty easy to use. And here is also example of a function. So here in this function, you can see the function name is area, and it requires us to pass two values and variables to this function, width and height. So what it does is somehow calculating the area based on the width and height. Imagine you have a square or rectangle, and then you may send to this function width and height of that, and then as an output, this function will return you the area. So if you declare this part, then later on in your application, by just using this simple line, var result is equal to area 5 and 6, then you will get as an output 30, because 5 and 6 are here being multiplied to each other, and then your result gonna be the numbers based on this input. Pretty simple. Try to use it, try to set this value and show it like in console log, or feed it to some div element as we previously used. Make sure to understand this concept, make sure to understand the input and output return of the function as well. It's very essential and beneficial. All right, now we have a concept of variable scope. We may have variables defined as a local variable or global variable. When they are being defined as a local variable, it is when a variable is being created inside of a function. So the meaning is, when you're having some variable as a local variable outside of the function, you cannot have access to them. They are only accessible through inside of your function, not outside of that. And then you have global variable. when a variable is being created outside of a function. Then you will be able to also access them. Here you can see an example. For instance, just like the previous example that we had, this area variable is only being used inside of the function because we are defining it inside this function. So here, when we close this function, like a statements, you cannot really use area variable outside. But here, result, you defined it outside of this scope of the function. So this is a global variable in this matter. Accessibility of the variables is like quite important when you are like creating websites, web applications, not only in JavaScript, in C#, Java, every other programming languages, they may have these similar concepts. Now let's talk a little bit about objects. An object is a collection of properties, and a property is an association between a name and a value. So when you have an object, as I said here, it's a collection of properties with different kind of data types, just like the example we had with the car. And here you can see there are 3 different methods that you can define an object in JavaScript and assign values to the variable of an object. You can see the methods, and whichever you enjoy to use, you can also use. Here you can see that we are defining an object and name it person. So person is new human, which previously we also defined what is a human. And then here we are assigning the values. The name is Veronica, the gender is female, and the age is 22. Here also the concept of constructor notation. You can see here that we are creating this object. The name is human, and we name it also person. And also here, the previous example, we are assigning these 3 variables to this object. And then here you can see with this notation, we are assigning these values to the properties of this object. Pretty simple. And then you can also have like different sort of objects like cars, hotel, or I don't know, anything that came up to your mind. And then we have type of operator, which you can use in order to return the data type of a JavaScript variable. So here are the examples, and then you can see what are the returns of using this type of. You can also use it in JavaScript to see how they work, and then send a value to console.log to see the return values by yourself. And then we have the keyword of this. In JavaScript, this is the object that owns the JavaScript code. In a function, this is the object that owns the function. In an object, this is the object itself. The value of this become the new object when this constructor is used to create an object. Here you can see an example. For instance, we are defining this object as a person. So it has first name, last name, and full name as a function. So while we are having this full name function, when we want to pass the values of first name and last name to console.log, by using this, we are referring to this person and then getting the values of first name and last name, which we can also use this as a person.first name and then person.last name. It's exactly the same. So this is exactly referring to the name of that object. All right, now let's talk about DOM or Document Object Model. The Document Object Model is a programming interface for HTML, XML, and SVG documents. It provides a structured representation of the document as a tree. The DOM defines methods that allows access to the tree so that they can change the document structure, style, and content. The DOM provides a representation of the document as a structured group of nodes and objects, expressing various properties and methods nodes can also have event handlers attached to them, and once an event is triggered, the event handlers get executed. Essentially, it connects web pages to script or programming languages. Although the DOM is often accessed using JavaScript, it is not a part of the JavaScript language. It can also be accessed by other languages. So it's a very important concept, DOM. And here you can see all the nodes of all the interfaces of the DOM, and then different type of nodes that it may have. There are a lot of them. Many of them, you're using them a lot in your web pages, such as document, such as window, URL time to time, event especially. They're all very nice to get to know about, but many of them are much more practical, especially in the intermediate phase for web developers to get to know and use. And here is also the sample of DOM structure. You can see that exactly when we talked about how a browser can show a web page, this DOM structure is very helpful. You can see that how in document interface of DOM, you can see that how it's like being created, all of these three of the elements and how they are like relate to each other. Accessing them is also could be quite important while you are working with them, getting the element ID and everything in JavaScript to change some properties and values of the attributes of them. So understanding DOM is a bit important, and there are lots of beneficial resources online for you to also find out more about them. All right, and here you can see the document object, which has title, last modified, URL, domain. There's also some description about them. For instance, when you want to have access to the title of the page, you can use document.title, the last modification date, and then the URL domain, and also some methods like document.write, which earlier we used, document.get elements by ID, which is quite beneficial and important in JavaScript, and the others. And here's also an example where you can see, for instance, we have this variable, name it MSG, short for message, and then we are showing the page title, and then getting the value of the title of the page by document.title, and also the page address by document.url, and the last modification date of that document as a web page as document.last modified. And then also here you can see we have an element el, and then we have a variable name el, and then we are assigning that el variable to document.get element by id using this name of the element message box, and then setting this message value which we previously defined, and then as an inner HTML value of that message box, here we are assigning this message value to it. Try to use it, try to see if you are able to use this part of the code. Later on, you will definitely use that a lot. All right, now let's get familiar with browser object model, which consists of the objects, navigator, history, screen, location, and document. And they are all children of window, and then you can get access to them, you can manipulate them using JavaScript in order to somehow represent some other values for the contents of the page that you are browsing through JavaScript. Here you can see the tree view of that for the window object, and then document, history, screen, navigator, and location. And then browser object model also have some properties and some methods. Here you can get familiar with them, and there are tons of examples also online how to use them, how to let JavaScript manipulate them. Previously we worked with window.alert. For instance, this history property, there's something that, for instance, you can get back to the some steps backward, some steps forward, and then the other properties of window object that you can see here. Make sure to use them. Let's see if you're able to work with them. Right, now let's talk about global objects. The global objects do not form a single model. Their names usually starts with a capital letter, and they are a string, number, boolean, date, math, regex, and some others. Here you can see, for instance, a string as one global object. You can see here we defined my string to how are you. Put it in the single quotation because there's a string here, and then semicolon at the end. So the way that JavaScript indexes this string as a character, you can see h is the character with the index of 0, as you saw in the array example, which the first one starts with 0 and the second one is 1. And then here there are different kind of methods that you can see. For instance, well, this one is a property. When you use myString.length here, as you can see, it will return 12, not the last index. This is the number of the characters inside, which starts from here 1, 2, 3, and then move on to 12. And then here you can see the method to uppercase. For instance, if we apply myString to uppercase, all of these characters will change to uppercase if they are lowercase, and the lowercase is also the opposite. And here you can return the character with the index that you include here. In this example, this is 2, so here you can see the index 2 is W, and then here you can see that somehow browse through the string and then find the index of this part of the code that you can include here. If there's something that is not here, then there's no value there. And also you can use also last index of, which goes to the last character. Here you can see we also have O here, but this one is the last one, so index number 9 is going to be returned, and also the other one. Let's talk about the other one because they're also important and interesting. So we have substring 2 and then 9, so it's going to bring us from this part up to this part. And then we have a split method, and then you can see that the whole string is going to be split into array of strings and then being separated by this space character here. So we have array which consists 3 strings, how, and then r, and then u. And then we have replace. You can see here you can define one part of the one string that JavaScript seek, find, and then replace with the other part, which is now is. So now it's going to return how is you. And then here we have trim. So in this example we don't have anything, but if there's a spaces around this string, then it's only going to return us the whole string part without the spaces. But they're very interesting and very beneficial when it comes to working with strings, so make sure to use them. Come up with an example, play with them a little bit, and make sure that you understand all of these methods. Later on, you're definitely going to use them. All right, then you have number as a global objects. Here are some methods that you can see. So here, if you apply this method on a variable, you can check if the value is not a number or it is a number. And then here you can see by using toFix, and you can check rounds to a specified number of decimal places as a string, it will be returned. And then to precision, rounds to a total number of places, and then to exponential. Some kind of mathematical related methods as well. And here the direct mathematic methods, here you can see by using math.p, number of the p is going to be returned. In some mathematical or scientific calculation, it may be beneficial for you. And then we have round, which rounds the number to the nearest integer, and then a squared, and then the other ones. And this map.random is also very interesting because sometimes we want to create a random number, and then this method will help you in order to do that. Try to see by yourself if you are able to use them, and also there are tons of examples online. And before also we discussed this date object. Here also, once again, the methods that you can use in order to work with date object. All right, now here are some comparison operators. If you previously worked with any programming languages, there must be some similarities. If not, then they're really easy to understand. Here you can see when we're using this double like equal operator, the example here, it's going to be returned true for us because 2 is equal to true. But if it was 2 here and then 3 here, then it wasn't true, so the false would be returned to us. This one is not equal to when we are checking some conditions, so this one returns us true because 3 is not equal to 2. And this one is a strict equal to, which here you can see this is like true again because it's exactly like this one. And then a strict not equal to, well, this one is not. And then we have greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, and then less than or equal to here. Later on we will definitely use them, and then you can see like in the examples how you can use them. Here are also some logical operators. When you are considering more than one condition, here you can use these logical operators. And is for considering the other condition here. And then here you can see in this example, this one is being returned true to us. I have to change this. I have to use this one. Now I can see that there's some mistakes here. I will change them to this sign instead of and here. So any of them become true with that, and then you can see this one is, well, why not? I can also do it right now. Then you can see how it works. Let's see. Let me find it right now, and then later on I will save it and also put it in the portal. Okay, now it's right. Previous one was not right. Good that we found it. Okay, now here you can see that if any of these conditions were true, then the whole thing gonna be returned true to us. So for instance, this one is true, this one is not. But because we are only considering if any of them is true, then it's gonna be true, then the whole thing is true. If both of them were true, also it would be true at the end as well. And here we can also check logical not. So this is exactly the opposite. This is true, but we are like, sorry, this is, yeah, this is true, but then we are like completely moving it to the other direction. Here there are also some decisions, the statements that later on we will get familiar with. If else, and switch. All right, now let's get familiar with if statement. The if statement checks a condition. If the condition was true, any statement in the subsequent code block will be executed. So the thing is, comes there, checks the condition. If it's true, then all the code inside of the if statement gonna be executed. Otherwise, the program or application or the browser is gonna leave behind this part of the code and just move on, just like nothing is like included there. Here there is an example of, not example, actually the way that you have to write a if statement. We have if keyboard here, and then we have the condition here that if checks here if it's like true or not. Then if the condition is like fine, then this part of the code gonna be executed. So here we have opening curly bracelet, and here we have closing curly bracelet. Let's try that. Let's try as an example. Let's see, I already created this part of the code for you. So you can see here I'm defining a variable named grade. It's 51. So if the grade is equal or greater than 50, then console log, we're gonna send to console log past a string here. So here when we run this part of the code, as you can see here, pass is going to be written. So now let's change it to, for instance, like 30. And now I'm going to save the code. And then I'm going to refresh. See, nothing is being written here, just like nothing is being included here. So the browser is going to come here and then check the variable here to see what is the grade. Here the grade is 30, so 30 is definitely less than 50, so not going to include this part of the code. Very simple, but very, very important and beneficial if a statement is. And then we have if-else statements. The if-else statement checks the condition. If the condition was true, it will execute the true part of the code, and if it was false, then it will execute the false part. Very simple. So the only difference is this part. So comes here, check the condition. One part of this code gonna be run, either this part or this part. And here you can see how we write if-else statement. So the thing is, here it comes, check the grade. If it was greater than 50, then pass is true. If it wasn't, then pass is equal to false. Now let's modify this part of the code. Let's see what we can get from that. I'm gonna add one else keyword here, and then I'm gonna send to the console log the string of failed. Oops, failed. All right. So when I hit refresh, I get failed. And if I change it to, for instance, 60, I will definitely get passed. That's it. And it's not really important how you put it here. For instance, this curly bracelet, some people like to write it like this. If you save it, if you run the code, then you can see it's exactly the same. It's totally up to you. Well, the more clear is, of course, the better. But you're gonna find your own style of writing the code. So as I said, both of them are true. As long as we have this semicolon, then it means the other line. Otherwise, you can just go to the other line and JavaScript will treat them as they are like the same line. And if they were only one line, then you can also consider this style of writing. The curly bracelet is to include multiple lines altogether as well. So now if I save this code, and if I run this, if I refresh this page, you can see here is still passed. So as I said, the curly bracelet is to somehow organizing your code and also including several lines. For instance, now I'm going to write one other line with the grade of, and then I'm going to add the value of grade here. Great. If I run this code, then you can see on the next line also there's the other line, but there's no way that I can like put it like this here. Let's see what will happen. If I save it, it will expect me to only have one line, but as you can see here, an error going to be returned to us. So that wasn't right. If I have multiple lines, as I said before, you're gonna have it in curly bracelet. All right, now we also tried it. Then we have switch statement. The switch statement checks the value of a variable, and for certain values, we can write code to execute. So it comes here, check if the value is like this one, this part of the code being executed, and then till the end. And if none of them were true, we can have default defined here, and then this part of the code being executed. Let's see we can write this code as well. First see the example. Here there is also one example. Here you can see we have switch. The variable one that takes is equal to 1. We're gonna have to include this break part. And then let's see. So we have variable name grade here, and then I'm gonna add switch statement here. I'm gonna consider grade. All right, what to check? Case. Imagine we have from 1 to 10. So case 1, for instance, you have to consider the way that I'm like writing them exactly like this. It should be, and then break at the end of each case. Okay, the thing is here we get the grade as a variable and then check if it's 1. We're gonna show to the console log you got 1. If it's 2, you got 2. 3, you got 3. And if it wasn't any of them, then we're gonna just send, I don't know what you got. So if I save it, I have 2 here, so it should show me that you got 2, but let's see. Yeah, but now let's change it to, for instance, 9. Save it, then it will tell us I don't know what you got, because we are only considering the cases of 1, 2, and 3. If I change it to 3, then yeah, you got 3. So this is it. Pretty simple, but very, very beneficial and useful. And then we have loops. Loops check a condition. If it returns true, a code block will run. Then the condition will be checked again until the condition becomes false and code block will no longer run. We have for, while, and do. All right, now let's get familiar with for loops. A for loop is useful if you want to run some lines of code a certain number of times. So it comes here, check the condition. If the condition is true, goes here, and then condition code will be executed, and then come back to the condition and check it all the time until the condition becomes false. Here is an example where you can see that we have like for, and then we have defined this variable I equal to 0, and then check here. There's a check part if the I is like less than 5, and then here after running this code once, we're gonna add 1 to the I variable. So it will be run for 5 times. And then let's see, let's recreate this part to discuss it in the code as well. And also see the result. These spaces are not important at all. I'm just adding them to make it more readable. That's the whole purpose. Look at the number of I. Let's see. Okay, now you can see that one time it's got executed, so I variable was 0, and then it went again to this code. How can I show it to you? Maybe put here and then this here. Okay. So here it was first 0, went here. This part of the code has been executed, so I variable is 0, and then goes back again. So initially now it was 0 initially, and then it become 1 because of this part. So now 1 or I is equal to 1, and then I variable is 1, becomes 2 because 1 has been added at the end of this part to it, and then became 3, and then 4, and once it became 5, when this check part has been checked, then I was like equal to 5, so this check part didn't let the code to this part of the code being executed again. But now if I change it to equal or less than 5, here you will see that I variable is 5 as well. Okay, something went missing. Oh, sorry. Should add it here. Okay. Now you see that I variable is 5 also been added. So this check part is important because of this issue that we just encountered. And now if I make it like 10, then you can see 10 times it's being shown from 0 to 9. But this is a very simple example. Imagine you want to show like different kind of columns with different kind of rows of a table with columns and everything with more complicated information. It was just a very simple example for loop. Here we have the keyboard, the whole condition, opening curly bracelet, the code to execute if condition was true, and then closing curly bracelet. This is how you write for loop. And also to dig deeper with this condition part, we have here initialization. We have to assign, we have to declare a variable and also set a value to the variable, and then the condition, and then update of that variable. You can also here decrease the number of the value of the variable, like I minus minus. It starts from, for instance, 5, and then check if it's like greater than 0, and then increase the value of that. Let me show you an example. So here we have I as the value as 5. Check if it's actually greater than 0, and then decrease the number here. If I save it and if I refresh the page here, you can see it starts with 5, 4, 3, 2, and then 1. And once the value of the variable I is becomes 0, then it will move on. Now let's get familiar with while loops. A while loop is a loop that runs a block of code over and over until a specific condition is true. Here you can see it comes, check the condition. If it's true, goes there and then come back here. And then whenever it gets false, then it will go out of this while loop. Here there is the way that we write it. Here we have while keyword, the condition, opening curly bracelet, and part of the code that we are looking forward to execute, and then closing curly bracelet. So let's create one while loop. Okay, while, for instance, let's define a variable I, set it to 10, and then while I is bigger than 0, and then opening curly bracelet and closing curly bracelet. Oh, sorry. Right. So here you can see we define a variable name I. The initial value is 10. Comes here, go to the while loop, checks, yeah, of course, it's like greater than 0. Comes here, send this part of the code here, and then decrease the value of the I by 1. And then goes back again and back again and back again until this check part gets false. So now if I refresh this page, okay, something interesting happened. Let's see. Oh, I forgot to include semicolon here. Some of you may already notice while I was telling. Okay, something else. What else? Okay, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? Looks fine to me. There must be some typos, something missing from the code. Okay, here it is. I forgot to add 1 plus here. So the thing is here, this part of the code is like a string, and then I'm adding the value of my variable I here, and then I wasn't including this part. So here is also one other part of the string, and then if I save it, this time probably it will run. Yeah, okay. So here I'm bigger than 0, I am 10, I'm bigger than 0, I am 9, and then goes on until here. So here you can see when it becomes 1, and then decrease by 1 again. So it's now 0, so this part of the code is not being executed anymore. Pretty simple example. All right, and then very similar to while loops, we have do while loops. A do while loop will always be executed at least once, even if the condition is false, because the code block is executed before the condition is tested. So here when it comes, we execute the code once, check the condition if it was true, and then goes all the way again and then execute the code again and again until the condition is like false. Here there's do while keywords, the code that will be executed at least once, and then the condition here that needs to be checked. Okay, now let's come here and add it here. All right. So here at first variable is 10. So let's see what will happen here. Okay, so when I refresh the page, oh, the reason that it's being loaded again is because we forgot to decrease the number of I. So it's keep going to this loop, and there's no going out from this loop. Okay, now I'm gonna save it again. You see what mistake I did? I forgot to add this line of a code. So it's always true. So it's always keep going and going and going if I don't include this part of the code. It was an interesting example. Let me close it completely and then open it again. Okay, now we can see here 1 time, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 times it's being executed. But now let's change it to 0. So it shouldn't be executed according to this check part here. But if I refresh it, then you can see that at least 1 time it's been executed. Now let's discuss a little bit about accessing elements in DOM. There are many ways that we can find elements in DOM. One of them is finding HTML elements by their ID. You can assign one HTML element to an element by using document.getElements by ID and then mentioning the ID of that element. And after that, you can treat that variable just like that HTML element. And then you can also use their tag names in order to assign them, and then all of those HTML elements by that tag, you can also have access to them with the variable name that you define. And you can also, by using class name, you can also access them. Imagine you have menu as a class name of some elements, and then by using getElements by class name, you can have access to those elements. And also you can find HTML elements by their CSS selectors, just like this method that you can hear, query selector all, and then a.menu. It means all of the a tags that have a menu class name, and then that variable can have access to those HTML elements. Here there's an example for that. You can see here in HTML code we have different kind of HTML elements, and here you can see we're having access to this one HTML element here, and then here you can see that we changed the class name of that HTML element to selected. Initially it was normal, so you can see how easy it is to have access to those elements and then change some attribute values of that HTML elements. You can try by yourself to see if you're successful to do that. If you remember the material from previous course, which you have to, you can define one class, one CSS class as normal, and then one CSS class as selected, adding some styles there, and then when you change those HTML elements style, actually class, and then you can see the changes affected for that HTML elements as well. And here you can also see how to remove HTML elements from the DOM. So when you assign one HTML element to a variable, you can use then remove child, then the that name of the element here quite easily. So the point is first assign the child to a variable, and then assign the parent of the child to that element, and then by accessing those that parent and then mentioning the variable name for the child, you can use remove child method, and then easily it will be removed. You can also try by that, try by yourself this code. You know enough about JavaScript to do it on your own now, and there are also tons of content online which you can also find and see by yourself. So the point is in this course is like very get to the point material, and all the answers are online. You can also search by yourself. There's no need to show all the material and all the very small like details, because if we try to actually show you as most details as possible, then hours of lessons is required, and then somehow having the skill of finding the answers by yourself from the internet maybe could be a wiser choice for yourself to survive by yourself, because in working environment there are tons of different scenarios and situations that you require like to find some solution for your problems, and then by having the skill of finding the right answers, which are almost all of the solutions online are accessible for you, then it's much better for you to also do it on yourself. All right, now here we can see that how to get access to elements attributes. So here, as you could see, get element ID, and then the ID of that HTML element, and then we can use the method of get attribute, and then the name of the attribute, which here, as in this example, this is class. And also other different properties and methods that you can also use in order to have access to HTML elements attributes. You can also try by yourself to see how you can do it by yourself. All right, now let's get familiar with events. Events are very important topic in JavaScript. Mainly, big part of JavaScript is to deal with events, different kind of events. The stuff is happening on web pages. Pages are being loaded, like pages, the way that user interact with pages, as a user interface that you're having. So it all comes to how to manage your events. And now let's get familiar what are the different type of events, what's the description of them, how we can use them. So the event interface represents any event of the DOM or DOM object. It contains common properties and methods to any event. Events trigger a function or a script. So we have UI or user interface events, keyword events, mouse events, form events, and mutation events. Here are example of user interface events. We have load, unload, error, resize, scroll. So initially, when page is being loaded and the page has finished loading, this one can be called, and you can run some part of the code or a script or function in order to execute it after this page is finished loading. And then we have unload, error. It's pretty clear when an error occurs in your web page. Resize, when browser windows has been resized, or scroll, when a user is scrolling down and up on your web page. And we have also keyword events. Key down, user press a key. Key up, user release a key. Key press, character is being inserted. And then we have mouse events, which is click, double click, mouse down, mouse up, mouse move, mouse over, and mouse out. Mouse out is when the mouse is like going off of an element. And mouse over is the actually the other one. When you somehow define a mouse over on an HTML element as an event, and then when user try to mouse over that element, then this event can be triggered. And then we have form events such as input, change, submit, reset, cut, copy, paste, and select. And also mutation events, DOM sub3 modified, DOM not inserted, and then DOM not removed, and then the other ones, which is dealing with DOM related events. Right, now let's see how we can use event handler. So to somehow manage events and handle them, first of all, we have to select the element, specify an event, and call the code when an event occurs. So here's an example. You can see that we are having access to this element, which the ID is my button, and then we have this method of onClick here. And whenever this event, which is onClick, which is a click event for mouse, as we earlier got familiar with, happens, this showDate function will be executed. So now let's see in real life situation. Let's see how it works. All right. Here I previously wrote this part of the code. So here we can see we have a button here, and then as an onEvent attribute, the value is click function. So whenever this button has been clicked, we have this function to be triggered. And here the function is also click function. So when this function, when this button is being clicked, we have this function triggered, and then here you can see that we are defining this part of the code for that button. So this is one way of doing it, and the other way is we somehow programmatically add that functionality. But now let's save this part, let's see, and run this code on our page to see how it works. Okay, here you can see when I click this button, this value has been inserted. All right, we need to modify some part of the code. For instance, first we have to add one Windows onload part here, which is equal to function. I will explain why we are adding this part later on. Just let me add it first. There are many ways in JavaScript to do something, and then it's nice to also get familiar with different ways. Right, so the name of the button was, where is it? Okay. You didn't have any actually ID for it before, so now we're gonna add name of the ID because we need to have access to it. All right, and then let's add on click here, which is equal to click function. Great. Let's see if I'm missing something. All right, let me save it. Let me run it first. Okay, something is missing. Windows is not defined. Let's see why. Actually, it's a typo. Yeah, it is. Why am I writing Windows? Okay, now you see. So now when I press click, then you can see that again the event is being triggered. So now let me explain you what really happened here. So first of all, we need to assign that event to that button, because initially, actually, let me remove this part first. Something, because we don't want to use that functionality there. Okay, exactly the same. Okay, now let's see what we did this time. So instead of have this part on click function, I remove that part. I assigned one ID to that button, my button, and then here Windows onload. So whenever page is being loaded, this part is being added. What this part is actually doing? This part is having access to that element, my button, which is this one, and add this onClick event to this button. And whenever someone click the button, this function is being triggered. That's the whole job of that function. And this function, as previous example, you see that in this show element, which is this one, this text is being included. That's it. Pretty simple. Very interesting to try. You also try to see, you can try both of the method by yourself. Very good example. And here also you can see actually description of this DOM event handlers. We have element here, the name of the event, and then the function that we need to trigger. And another sample here you can see by yourself. And then we also have event listeners, new functionality to JavaScript. We have element here, this method that we can call, which we need to mention the name of the event and also the part of the code that we actually want to run, and then the event flow of that. This is also another method of calling a function and assigning calling a event and then triggering that event by using event listeners. Here's an example where you can see actually. So here we have that HTML elements, and then by using this method add event listener for click event, we are adding this function show data here. You can also try it by yourself. Also, there are tons of examples online. Now let's talk a little bit about validation. HTML form validation can be done by JavaScript code. Here are a few validation types you may apply on your HTML form elements. For instance, you have a form, and here are different kind of validations. For instance, if you enter values for a certain element, range of input values, for instance, you have an age field, and then users have to enter their field. So nobody in this planet is like 300 years old. So you have to come up with some sort of a range for that. And then we have data type validation. For instance, you have first name in your form, and then somebody entered a number, and then you can also detect that, and then different parts. And about validation, it's really nice to do it on front part of your code, but also if you're having some sort of a server and some programming language on the back end side of your site, as like, for instance, ASP.NET, PHP, or whatever. Also, validation could be nice to be done on your back end and your server side as well. And now let's talk a little bit about error handling. We have this try, catch, true, finally part for error handling. Let's see how any of them means something. So for try is to let you test the block of code for errors, and then catch is the part that lets you handle the errors, and true is lets you create custom errors to see how you can deal with them. And finally is the part that is being executed at last, and lets you execute code after try and catch regardless of the result. Here you see an example. For instance, you have try this part and then catching this part. It's a bit advanced topic, but it's nice to just get familiar with that. In testing, in error handling part, you get to use it a lot in your applications when you're like passing along after that intermediate level to the advanced level. But there are tons of material also online which you can find and learn much more by yourself as well. Alright, now let's get familiar how we can do debugging in different browsers such as Chrome, Firefox, and Edge. So for instance, in Chrome, you can go here and then more tools. We have here developer tools. And then here you can see the console tab that earlier we also worked with it. You can see if there's any error here. You can pass some values by using console.log here. So this is one of the ways that you can also do some checking and testing of your functions and different part of JavaScript code. A shortcut would be also F12, very simple. So if I close this part and I simply just press F12, that part will be shown to me again. Now let's see what is a strict mode. If you encounter and if you write this line of code at the beginning of your pages or JavaScript files, use a strict, then a strict mode will be on. So what it does is simply these parts. So first of all, using a variable without declaring it, it's not allowed. Using an object without declaring it, it's not allowed. Deleting a variable or object is not allowed. Deleting a function is not allowed. Duplicating a parameter name is not allowed. Octal numeric literals are not allowed. Escape characters are not allowed. Writing to a read-only property is not allowed. Writing to a get-only property is not allowed. Deleting an undeletable property is not allowed. The string eval and arguments cannot be used as a variable. So it applies some concerns and some restrictions in order to make sure that you are writing some sort of a more secure JavaScript code. That's it. you can set the mode to on and then see if you are able to actually do one of these items here, and then you can see that you're going to encounter some error. Right now, let's get familiar a little bit with JSON. JSON, or JavaScript Object Notation, is a format for storing and transporting data, and often used when data is sent from a server to a web page. So whenever you are actually receiving data by JavaScript from a server, this data usually is being sent to you in JSON format. This is an example of a JSON format. You can see that there's the students here, and then 3 students is being returned to you. It's nice to get to know more about. We have a link to get to know more about, and then in your real life applications, you're definitely going to use that. Now let's get introduced a little bit with JavaScript libraries and frameworks. A JavaScript library is a library of pre-written JavaScript which allows developer to be able to write their code in an easier and more efficient way for JavaScript-based applications. Frameworks were intended to offer a comprehensive and integrated platform for building applications by offering general functionality such as cross-platform memory management, multi-threading, abstractions, dynamic structures, and etc. As an example, we have jQuery, which is very well known. Many years ago, jQuery got introduced, and on top of JavaScript, if you learn that knowledge, is also going to be very beneficial. And many job advertisements also, it's been mentioned that it's a very plus point to have a skill for when you're applying for that job. You can get to know more about the jQuery website. And then we have AngularJS, also developed by Google. This is also a very well-known and very one of the top demands of the industry when it comes to IT industry. And the competitor is also React, which has been introduced and developed by Facebook. They're all open source, and many developers are contributing. And definitely JavaScript is a great start for you to start with, but then adding these frameworks to your skills also, you're going to guarantee that you're going to have a very nice, decent job in this market right now. Because if you consider job applications now, React or Angular, jQuery is a little bit outdated comparing to these two, but these two are one of the highest top demands in web applications development, actually. So make sure to understand a little bit more about, and let's see, after this phase, you will be able to also get to know more and also get familiar with React or Angular by yourself as well. Here are some links that you can also go through and find out more about the material of the course if you are interested to learn more. And make sure to report if there was any mistakes in the slides or tutorial video, ask for new topics if you're interested, and then give feedback and suggest some ideas about the whole course and material. Thank you so much for your consideration. It was more than 2 hours, I guess the longest tutorial video that we ever created, although I created an important part, not the whole tutorial video all itself, but still it was quite long, and I hope that the material was beneficial for you. So thank you for your consideration, and I hope you had a wonderful class.